As of January 1st, Massachusetts minimum wage is now $10 an hour. Many argue that's still not a living wage in this economy, and there's a $15 an hour minimum wage movement across the country. The owner of the Haymarket Cafe in Northampton is on board with the $15 an hour amount. Peter Simpson explained his business model and approach to Connecting Point correspondent Carolee McGrath.
What you often find between front of that and the back of the house is wait staff making considerably more per hour than the folks in the back of the house. And it should be clear that these lines are also around ethnic lines as well, where you find much of the people in the back of the house, they can't really be the face of the public, right? Because of language skills or how they look. And it's a way for me to address those issues which I have not been able to, for the business unto itself, afford to really raise people past $13 or $14 an hour. You have people in the back of the house who have gone to culinary school, and they sometimes are making $5, $6, $7 an hour less than those who are working in the front of the house. So since essentially sharing tips in Massachusetts is illegal between front of the house and the back of the house, I had an idea, which was not my idea, because I think a lot of people in the West Coast and some people in New York City, as you see these sub-minimum wages raising, i.e. wait staff wages, I think the response from business owners is, well, why not just extract those wages altogether? And
when you're talking about wages, you're talking about extracting the tips
correct.
From the wait staff.
So essentially what you're seeing in some restaurants is basically them raising the prices 20% and then taking that money and distributing it more evenly. So instead of the wait staff making 28 and the cooks making 14, maybe the wait staff makes 24 and the cooks make 17.
All right, let's talk first about the wait staff, because as a former waitress, going back, you lived for those tips. That's
Correct.
what you worked for. That's what you tried to be fast on, great service. That's what really motivated you. How does your wait staff feel about this?
I was very concerned about it because I felt like I wasn't sure if in the short term whether they would be taking a hit or not. And it's very interesting. One of the women who works at the cafe, who has primarily been cooking, she said to me yesterday, she said, I think I would like to work out in the front of the house now. I said, well, why? Am I doing something wrong? Or, is this adjustment difficult for you? She goes, no. I've never wanted to wait tables in the... She's been waiting tables for one shift a week, and she felt like this now has some consistency to it. I know clearly that I'm going to be making $14 an hour for an 8-hour shift, and it's something that I can count on. And this is some of the issues that were brought up at the staff meeting when we talked about it, whereas people thought, oh, great, because there's some days where I'm only making, $11, $10 an hour.
Right, so Tuesday nights are not good nights in the restaurant business, but if you're that really good waitress or waiter who gets the Saturday night shift, who makes $200, $300, on a night like that, they're not going to want to do this.
Well, so for us, we're making it a flat wage across the table. We're also some of the prices are less expensive than other restaurants. But for instance, someone like Danny Meyer, in New York City, he owns Shake Shack and a number of other larger high-end restaurants. I don't think he's leveling the playing field between the cooks and the waitstaff. He's saying to the waitstaff, you recognize there's a discrepancy here. You recognize that the product which is coming to the table has been put together by a whole range of people, people who the customer never sees. And why should they not have the benefit of that added income from the customer? So he's saying to them, not saying, okay, everyone's going to be paid the same. He's saying to them, instead of $28 an hour, knock it down to $25 and bring that $3 an hour back to the cooks.
Okay, let's go back to the customers, though, because you talked about raising your prices. So that might work maybe in Northampton, but it's not going to work everywhere. Are you worried about your bottom line?
I am. I think the biggest hit is obviously the first jump, going 20% in the restaurant, and I'm raising it 10% upstairs in the cafe. It's in lieu of tips, right? So you're just telling people, it's okay.
Right, but people are still going to say, wait a second, how much is this costing me?
And I feel like some of the responses in New York City is people have been adding an admin fee, where they say, with a 20% admin fee. But I just feel like that's hogwash. It's essentially, it's labor, and the owner should be paying for the labor. And people should feel like what they're earning is for the work that they do, that their earnings should not be at the whim of the customer.
But it's not necessarily at the whim of the customer, though. If somebody provides you fantastic service, whether delivering something to your house or they're waiting on you at a restaurant, and you want to reward them, it's like, gosh, I love that guy. He just was so nice and friendly and good to my kids. I want to give him a little something extra.
That's correct. But there are other systems that we can look at. For instance, in Europe, where people are paid the minimum wage or whatever the wage is. It's not a sub-minimum wage by any means. And it's a gestural tip, right? So on a $40 entree, maybe you leave $4. It's just something to say, like, I really appreciated your service. Because you know...
For $4?
Yes,
say,
but there's a recognition that they're getting paid a living wage, right? And you see that in wait staff in Europe, where they understand, like, you know what, this is a dignified job. I get paid for the work that I do, and I don't need to sweet talk you in any way.
Now, are you concerned, though, as a business owner across the board? It's wonderful. It's a really nice gesture to raise the minimum wage for your employees.
Sure.
But this could cost jobs, and that's what people on the other side of this issue have said. This could cost jobs. Are you worried about that?
I'm not worried about it. Obviously, I want to stay in business, right? But when I look at it from the immediate sense, I'm raising prices in lieu of tips. So that's very clear. The customers aren't going to have to budge at all. The next 3 years, it's very clear. I'm going to raise the wages $1 an hour across the board for the next 3 years. And those prices will have to increase 2%, 3%. But I've spoken with the customers at the cafe. Do you believe that people should be able to work full-time and still be under the poverty line? Is that fair? Is that sort of a value that we as Americans want to feel like is the status quo?
No, but on the other hand, people would say, look, a minimum wage job is one where you start and then you work your way up the ladder.
I know, but that's not the case anymore.
But that's what people will say.
You find people our age who are working in diners.
Go on, go ahead, our age.
You see what I'm saying now, right? You see many people at Walmart where you think to yourself, that person seems like they should be retired. Why are they working? Or why is there a 42-year-old lady working in there? And why, if she's working at Walmart, is she still having to collect food stamps or housing benefits? And this is the main reason why these bills have come to the floor in our legislature, is because they want to address this. It's almost as if it was a subsidy to these larger corporations who are, and the reason why it's focused at larger corporations is because there's been sort of a detailed analysis as can they afford it? And with their profit margins and their public face, it seems like they would be more capable. Now, there's a very good question, can smaller businesses actually afford this? And I think it has to be done very carefully. For instance, I live in Franklin County, where I wonder if a $15 minimum wage would work. But in Northampton or Amherst, maybe it might.
Right. Well, Peter Simpson, thank you so much for joining us. This is a very interesting discussion. I appreciate it. Good luck.
A pleasure to meet you.